Is this legit? I'm Sophie, tech marketer and social scientist. When I'm not advising tech startups on their marketing strategies, I'm helping protect everyday folks from online threats.
I'm Kris, a marketer with a background in both agencies and tech companies.
This week on Is This Legit?
Spitting out content for the sake of creating content and not really putting much thought.
Hello, everybody. We're back with another episode of Is This Legit?
I'm Kris.
I'm Soph. Today we're talking about AI in marketing. There's a lot to say about AI. There are plenty of different angles we can take, but being marketers, we'll be exploring lovely marketing mishaps. Should you use it? When should you use AI to help your marketing? And how? Has it been going well so far or not? A lot of brands have been making a lot of mistakes, so let's dive into those.
Yes, and the final question as well, will AI take our jobs?
No. Done. Episode over.
Okay. We're gonna dive deep, as we love to say. All right. What do we mean by AI in marketing? I use AI almost on the daily, and I still have a bit of a love-hate relationship. I think AI is really useful, but there is a limit to where it can be useful or not. So when we break it down, you can use AI in the most basic terms to create content, such as, ad copy, blog posts, whatever else. There's advertising optimization. For example, Google Ads has their recommendations on how to who to target, perhaps. And then we have customer segmentation and any kind of predictive analytics. I think, Soph, you and I were probably most familiar with content creation.
Yeah, partially. The content creation, I'd say in terms of analytics, people are trying to use generative AI tools to do analytics, which it's not meant for. And I think that's a big kind of problem that people don't always realize. Large language models are used to predict the next word coming in a sentence and give you an answer based off of a set of data. It's not actually meant to analyze proper data. So then you'll get some lovely things like, oh yes, this is the calculation, but the calculation is wrong because it's not meant to do calculation or analytics. It's meant to analyze language, right? So I don't use Gen AI for analytics. Of course not. That's not what it's meant for.
Whenever I have tried doing that, it gets basic math so wrong that it's embarrassing.
Because it's not meant for it, right? And that's also the thing, right? People are using it to do simple calculations instead of their calculator. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's not meant for that.
Although, pro tip, I do like to use, my most visited website is percentagecalculator.com because I'm really bad with percentages. I know the formulas, but there's a page where you can input, hey, how much was this increase to that increase? And that always gets it right. AI never gets it right.
But there's no AI on that webpage, right? Because you don't need AI to do that. It's a simple formula. Yeah.
It's mad.
So in terms of if we're thinking of use cases in marketing, there are different segments that we can kind of think of. If we're thinking of customer experience and personalization, definitely I think that's a good case for, because then you have a good enough database and you have actual material that you can analyze and then hopefully personalize the experience. And so in that sense, I think that's definitely a valid use case. So then when it comes to content creation, we're thinking of, image generation or text generation. But I have, I've been training some students to do content marketing really effectively and really high quality. And there is 1,000%, there's some AI, sprinkled around in that process, but it's never here's a keyword and then you get the output out and it's great. I don't see it ever being that. I've tested a whole ton of tools when it comes to content creation. I've had plenty of, online friends or real life friends building tools to help with that process, asking me like, hey, what do you think about how we've done that process? And there's still, I'd say, like most of those tools that claim to automate that content creation in terms of writing, I'd say like get it to maybe like 80%. And then you still want a human. So even the ones that have a lot of research and have like helped with that process, you're still missing something, right? And so I think the valid use case when it comes to content creation, at least on my end, from like more long form or web or whatever, it's more about accelerating some of those bits that take more time. But one major thing when it comes to that I try to explain to people, you need to be able to do it manually first so that you know what good is, so that you can actually edit whatever comes out. Because if you don't know what good looks like, then you can't edit it to be good. You know, I've had some of my interns that they were like, why is it taking me so long to get a piece out? And like, it's, you know, I'm like, yes, because just trust the process. You know, the process isn't put the prompt into AI and then you'll get a thing. It's not going to happen. I'm like, just follow the process, use it when it makes sense. And the first few might take like a month to actually get a draft out that makes sense. But then once you get it, you're like, oh, okay, this process actually does work. And I can use AI in this bit, in this bit, in this bit. And then it goes really fast. Where a piece could have taken 3 months, now it can take like a week, you know, to get all the extra insights that's not AI. Anyway, so that's more about like the content creation use case.
I think the point about like having the experience is like crucial, is that when you have gone through that process, you already know what it takes to like get to a good output. That's where you start like seeing the value of AI. Like somebody who has never created a piece of content, that's where they're like, oh, I just like gave a prompt and I copy pasted this thing. And now why is everyone telling me that this is like bad? Because it is bad. It's not supposed to be taken like directly from like the first output that you receive and like without like critically going through it, like editing it, rearranging things, and just like putting it out there. Like I use it a lot for social media content creation. And for example, for me, oftentimes I'm not the subject matter expert of various topics that I have to cover for the content that I'm producing for a brand. And it helps me, for example, shortening, clarifying a lot of the content that I work with. You know, a lot of this explain it to me like I'm 5, kind of like things where it's like deep data analytics topics. I'm never going to be an expert, and I don't have to be an expert. I have to be the expert in creating social media content. But the reality is that a lot of these topics are what I need to be translating into social. So that's where it helps me a lot. For example, what I do is I take a long form blog post and I ask it to create like 5 ideas of like potential social media content. And then again, I use it to narrow down or maybe write some scripts for short videos, make like carousels, make some other tables. So it really does help there, but I would never, just like 1-to-1, whatever the first output is, like put it out on social.
You know, it's interesting because before we had a lot of like Gen AI tools readily available for everyone, what you're describing, like being able to like redistribute long form content into like platform optimized shorter bits and whatnot, like we had to do that manually, right? And so because we've done it manually, I think for enough time, and then it's much easier to be like, this output from AI was shit, this one was good, this one was bad. But that's only because we've had to do it. So with the interns that I've been training, like I tell them, I'm like, look through the article and mark where you think there could be visualization opportunities where like something can be a carousel. It's just easier to do it a few times for yourself, do a bit of the, I don't know, quote, hard work.
Actually use your own brain for change.
And then you can accelerate with AI later, like just the speed of doing it. But you need to do it at least a few times to be like, okay, this is where that is good. This is where it's bad. This is where, this format works and this is where it doesn't. Otherwise, what you're going to get is just like AI slob.
Generic shit that is not interesting to read and it's not useful. What AI essentially does is also it's taking something that already exists, right? Yeah. And kind of like retranslates it. So again, why would you want to put out something that is a copy of everything that is already out there.
Other use cases, in terms of customer service, I think we've had chatbots for a really long time, so that's nothing new necessarily. I'd say people have had issues with chatbots for a long time as well. So it's not a bad use case, but it comes back also to the customer experience problem where if you don't have any access to a human ever in that process, then you're in trouble. You get into this cycle of, I asked the chatbot something, it doesn't actually give me the right answer. It sends me to a support article that still doesn't answer the thing. And then it keeps on going round and round. And I'm like, I'm still not getting the answer, right? Example, I was registering a domain, I don't know, like during the holidays a few weeks ago. And with whoever I registered my domains with, it wasn't working for some reason. It kept on saying registration failed. And I'm like, it's available. What the hell's going on? And I messaged the provider. And at first, like, it was like chatbot. I'm like, okay, but it wasn't working. It's like, okay, well, if it doesn't work, then contact us. But then I was able to contact them quite well by email. They answered the next day. It got figured out. And they actually, like, I would have never been able to solve it just with the chatbot. But because, most use cases probably you would have, by the time I couldn't, and I emailed them, and that was still part of that customer experience process, right? It wasn't like I had to go dig somewhere else. They were like, okay, obviously you haven't figured it out. This didn't answer. So, please send your request through email. The next day I got a customer service rep that answered, and they noticed that they wouldn't be able to help. So they brought in a product support person in, and they gave me the steps. They're like, okay, we know this is a known issue. Here are the steps. Try it this way and let me know, because we don't think we'll be able to do a proper product fix soon. And it worked. And I was like, thank you so much, And so that's kind of the same as like content creation, right? We merge yes, we have the chatbot, the AI. And then once it hits that wall of like, it's obviously not working, if you are able to bring that a human in, then you have a good experience.
Yeah. And it's funny because I have a lot of issues, for example, with like local services in Finland. Let's say banking, or I'm looking for a house and I have a question. And what happens, because I'm in Finland, a lot of these chatbots, their default language that they've been trained in is in Finnish. So as soon as I write my question in English, I get a response that this bot cannot respond in English. So that's where I do still need a person. So even like these funny little limitations, and like understandably so, like of course they're going to prioritize a service in Finnish, but then that's why you need to make some actual person available still in these chat sections. Like most of the situations, like I always get the help that I need, but it is kind of like, the first experience that you get is like, sorry, I can't actually help you with this chatbot.
But I'd have to say the customer experience in a non-English speaking country since LLMs have become available has skyrocketed. When I moved to Finland 10 years ago, I could not really get by without Finnish. It was practically impossible. Banking apps, like they would block the translation from browser. Well, a lot of companies still do that. They block the translations on browser. Well, some companies are just like normal, non-sensitive shit, and they still block it. And I'm like, why do you block Google Translate from translating your website? Like, you're making it a lot harder for me, So you can do that in your website settings, and please don't. Like, yeah, it's not going to be great translation, but we know that it's not the brand anyway. So, but a lot of these more crucial apps, they didn't have translation. They were blocked from being translated, which is another issue. You couldn't get an English version, but now they're able to more easily translate. It's not great. It doesn't replace translators. So sometimes you're just like, okay, come on, this is not right? But it does make it more accessible to everybody else who might not get by with Finnish well enough. We order our groceries online. It hasn't been very recently that the apps were available in English. So then I'd have to rely on my partner to do most of that. The apps are automatically translated. So there's very funny words, but they're very upfront about it. They're like, this is automatic translation. Please let us know if something is really off. There's an option. And that's all about customer experience, right? And it's like, if you're using AI, there's going to be chances of it getting wrong. Just be upfront about it and have an option for people to be like, hey, this was a mistake. And then you can actually fix it.
Yeah, I think the feedback loop is so crucial with anything AI related, is that, it's most likely like physically impossible to check everything unless you really want to like get this product out. So just having that option to report something that you spot is good.
Any other use cases, I guess, that we've seen, market research or just like research or analytics in general? I think that's a big, how can I say? It's been a gap, I think, in communication for a while. There's a lot of companies that have been using machine learning and data analytics for a long time to do this kind of stuff. People think of, this new AI boom. When they think of it, they think of generative AI. So large language models. Market research does not fall into that category. And unfortunately, a lot of now companies are like, oh, we do social listening or analytics or market research. And really, when you look behind, it's like, no, you're actually using an API that's from one of the Gen AI models. This is not what we're talking about, right? So I think in marketing, in that sense, what I think there is a gap in is the companies that actually use machine learning and that have been using their own predictive models for a while. They should not be trying to get in the Gen AI like discussion or messaging, because now there's a mistrust of AI powered. Okay, cool. What the hell are you using? Is it hallucinating? And I think we've seen more and more that people are distrusting of when companies are using, oh, we are AI powered. And I'm like, okay, so I don't trust actually what's coming out. So in that category of like market research, I would really caution companies that actually have machine learning or some kind of AI to actually say in what capacity, because then you build that trust back up again in, oh, actually, we are using real data. We're not using, the ChatGPT API or whatever to just predict what the words should be. We're actually using real data to give you something. I don't know. Have you been using social listening tools or other kinds of analytic tools?
Well, I use like social listening, for example, Meltwater, right? But it is I haven't seen their predictive like elements in there. It is pretty much like reporting on like what's been happening in retrospect.
Yeah.
I guess in some ways, like, yes, for bigger marketing projects or marketing campaigns, you can do a bit of like predictive modeling. Like predictive modeling in marketing is not a new thing. Like it was just very inaccessible for people before because it required like actual mathematicians working on these very complex, data problems. So yes, it's not accessible. So what these predictive models boosted with AI can do is like make it a bit more accessible. But I think, again, it's just not really an area that I've been working with. Like, it's not something that I would maybe necessarily use in social media because, again, social media, predicting something there is really hard. You're never going to be able to predict what is the next social media trend, like something super random, an audio or whatever will just like emerge out of nowhere and go viral. And then it's going to be viral for like 2 weeks. And that's it. Like they go so fast that you just have to be like really tapped in, glued into what is happening with kind of like the general like pop culture zeitgeist. And I don't really know how much predictability you can do for social media, like my specific area.
Yeah, I'm thinking the only real use case is most likely just, automating, keeping tabs on trending anything, right? So like that's probably the only real use case that makes sense. It's not really predictive, but it's more like catching things quicker than if a human would keep tabs.
Exactly. You can, for example, I've seen this social media management platform. It's called Plot, and they're very like specialized in like TikTok and these like trending videos. So you can actually have these, and they analyze like on video text. So you can actually have these like keywords that you're following. Whenever something does start like trending or there's anything interesting related to your brand specifically, then it will actually be able to like catch that.
See, yeah, again, like I don't know how much of AI they're using for that, but
it's very AI focused, I understand.
But it's not Gen AI. And I think that's what people kind of forget. Like, it's not because there's AI that it's necessarily generative AI.
Yeah.
Okay, other categories, campaign optimization. I don't run a lot of ads, but I do run a little bit. And to be honest, in the past, they've been trying to do campaign optimization like directly in ad platform tools, and some have been better than others. I don't always trust whatever comes out. Sometimes, sure, but not always. And so, but again, you can't know unless you've done it yourself. And so if you haven't used those platforms, then you can't tell whether the optimization recommendation is actually good or not.
I think the trust part is very like crucial here, because if you're running ads directly from Google or Meta and they have their own automatizations or AI alerts or something, how can you actually trust that this is legit, or they are just saying that, hey, this ad is performing really great, you should put more budget into this ad?
It's like, of course, you want to make money. Like, of course, you're going to say put more, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like you're getting more impressions and more engagement, but is that like real engagement? Is it like real impressions, or you're just showing it to your AI accounts, which is now like a thing on Meta, that they're putting out all of these like AI, like non-real people, and that's where we get to this like dead internet theory, that there's no real people left online creating real people content. A whole separate topic.
Yeah. So in terms of like campaign optimization, I'm still iffy as to the use case for AI there. The last category is visual content, and I think that's what people see the most, and that's the biggest fails that we've seen, because you can physically see it, obviously, when it comes,
and it's very accessible.
Yeah, or video. I mostly use the visual generation to mood board, to get ideas, to try to mock up in terms of, I'm not a designer, but I can get by quite well. I keep on saying I'm not a designer. Heck, I've been designing websites for I don't know how long now. Like, maybe I should just stop and call myself a designer. I don't know. But anyway, so I use it mostly to be like, okay, I want this in this style. What does it look like? Okay, yes, no. Then I'll still do it myself. Then I'll still fix it myself. Some small use cases that I've really, really liked is stuff like, I've done the illustration myself in Procreate, for example, and then I've moved it to, because I don't want to do the vector myself because it's going to take me too long and I'm too lazy. Then I'll put it in a tool, and that's AI powered or whatever. And then it'll make like my pixel based illustration into a vector illustration. And then I can actually, oh my God, brilliant, right? But again, it's not like, okay, do this, and then you're like, this is terrible, so I guess it doesn't work. I'm like, no, like but again, you need to have done it manually to be able to know. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I use the visual Gen AI. Very rarely will I use something just purely as is.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, that, again, as we said before, I would really not take something directly from, I don't know, DALL-E and like post it. I see people doing it a lot, and
you can tell, right?
Yes, you can. Different AI tools, they have their own style, so you can almost like tell which one generated it. Like if it's Midjourney or DALL-E, it's just very apparent. Same as you, I've been using it for mockups and kind of like references, like, hey, this is roughly what I want. But lately, so I've been just taking like actual photos and putting them in there. Obviously, all the companies and, leadership teams, they're kind of like pushing for these, how to be more efficient and how do we like use AI more. And I've been kind of like, particularly in my field, I've been trying to find like references of brands that are using AI in their social media content. I have like a little slide that kind of like gathers all of these like examples that I've seen out in the wild. SEMrush does it. I've also seen Google do it, because obviously they have their own like AI tools. So of course they want to like use that to promote it. And I'm pretty sure that their management team is also pressuring their social team to use their own AI models. So while we haven't really used AI for maybe like one or two pieces, I'm kind of like, I'm open to it, but I would again use a designer for that, whether it's output that needs a bit of like tweaking, or just their blessing that, yes, this is something that aligns with a brand and we can actually put it out there and there's like no, mistakes in there.
How does SEMrush use AI in their visual content?
So I've seen, for example, one example that I've seen is they use these like, these like fake billboard ads. So they created... Yeah, so there was a carousel post where they had generated these like cityscapes and a blank billboard space, and they put customer testimonials on these like billboards. And when you like zoom in, you can like if you have it like really like zoomed out, like it looks fine. But when you start zooming in on people, you see that there's like some inconsistencies in how they're walking or the human shapes and whatever else is going on there. So that those are like more obvious examples. And then there's, I guess, like mock-ups if they have these kind of like memes, and they want to like, you know, like these like formats where you have like a image and like some copy underneath that. So there was like a very clearly generated image that is like a laptop on a desk. And this is like a setting. It's not like that they generated a human or any like other live person thing, whatever. So I feel like for these situations where it's just to illustrate like an idea and it's very, you know, there's no really mistakes that you can put in there. I think that's kind of like a fine, okay use of AI.
I mean, before that, people were using stock photos constantly. I mean, it's not that different in that sense.
Exactly. It looked very much like stock photo-y.
Yeah. So it ultimately comes down to like, is this a use case that we would have used a stock photo and we just can't find the right stock photo, so we use Gen AI kind of thing? Then it's all right. I'm not a fan of using stock photos that much. Sometimes it's fine, but sometimes you see the same photo over and over and over, and then you're like, okay, I think this is enough. But another issue now is that, you know, those stock photo websites, we're starting to see like Gen AI photos popping up as well. Then I'm like, if I'm going for a stock photo, like I just want a real person. Like
exactly. Like this should be the safe haven from all of AI stuff. Like just stick to your guns. And, you know, in a world of AI, this is what makes you different.
Yeah. Okay. These were all
but yeah, in general, I do believe that the rise of AI in marketing has been a large contributor to. There's this like term that I think probably not Ed Citron from Better Offline has coined, but he uses it a lot, and that's he says enshittification of the internet. And I feel that AI has sort of brought along this enshittification of marketing, where anyone who is not a marketer thinks that now they can do marketing. They don't need to hire somebody for marketing.
They already thought that before, so
yes.
It's not better now.
But now they do it in like large volumes. So, you know, every time I think anyone in marketing has had some person from like another department, HR, sales, whatever else, they've come to a marketer and said, hey, why aren't we doing this? Or can we do X, Y, Z? And as a marketer, you've probably thought about it already. There's a valid reason why we're not doing this. And now anyone who didn't have the time or copywriting skills or, you know, design skills, with AI, they think they can, and they will do it.
And unfortunately, then you end up with this huge blob of fluff of who knows what that makes no sense. And because it looks productive, people think that it's worth putting out.
Yes.
And then we're stuck basically as marketers being the editors of AI slop. And
that's my issue with this, is that like I want to create, I don't want to be there like editing whatever AI slop we have. Another thing I think is that you mentioned you have interns who again like use AI, but they've never done something on their own. And what I'm afraid of is that like in a couple of years, like we have this new kind of like generation coming on, and they've never had to do anything on their own and like really rationalize their decisions, like just like creating art. It's not that art creation is just like I draw a house or a stick man and this is art. Like there is a valid reason and rationale that went into this. And like I think I like to go often back into the golden age of advertising with like the 1960s and 70s, where there were, if you've watched like Mad Men, it's one of my favorite series, and what actually wanted me to join advertising and marketing is that people actually sat down and like sometimes they wouldn't do anything their entire day, and they would just like brainstorm and ideate, and they would have these like stories that would actually lead to why we're doing this campaign, why we're approaching it from this angle. And I would like for people to actually go back to these ad copy, like Volkswagen Beetle, fantastic like campaigns by, I believe, Ogilvy. I like to go back to that oftentimes because I think it's so clever. It's very minimalist. It's using great wordplay and attaching that to images. And I just don't see that enough in a world that is like spitting out content for the sake of like creating content and not really putting much thought. And I guess it's also like the short lifespan of a lot of these things that just people don't want to put in the time to like think about the creative that much anymore.
Which is also why, I'm definitely a proponent of minimum viable content with a high bar for quality. And, finding that sweet spot of like good enough, but good enough being actually great. And it's interesting because I can see definitely in some of my interns that like there's a lot of fears to get over and, oh, but is this good enough? But are you going to help me fix it? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell you like what's good and what's not good and why. No, but are you going to fix it? I'm like, no, I'm not going to fix it. You're going to fix it. And if they just keep going with that process, it seems like they can actually get to that point of understanding quite quickly. Like it doesn't actually take that long. I've had good mentors, right? I've noticed that even though it's tough for them to get over those hurdles of thinking like, okay, well, if I'm going to be doing writing or whatever, like, oh, it's easy. I'll just use some, generative AI text and then it'll be fine. And my process is quite like detailed, but very quickly, if they just trust the process, then they'll get there, right? I've had some mentors early on. I was really lucky before we had Gen AI readily available. I had some really good mentors that taught me what minimum viable was and what good quality was. And so I was able to like internalize that. And so now hopefully I can imbue a little bit into some of the next generation of marketers or whatnot. Hopefully we won't keep on getting kind of, I don't know what's good. So then I think this is good enough. And I'm like, no, this is not good enough. And then going back and forth, like, it's still not good enough. What do you mean it's not good enough? I'm like, because the computer wrote this. It's like, but should I rewrite it? I'm like, no, you need to figure out what's good, what's not good. And then over and over. And then eventually we'll get to something truly great. So I think it's possible, but I've heard also a lot of senior or more experienced coders saying like, okay, now you can create code with AI, great. But if you don't know what's good, then you don't know how to fix it. So it does make it much quicker for people that know what good is. But the ones that don't, they think that it's good and then it breaks and then they don't know why or how to fix it. So biggest misconceptions, it's not just putting in a prompt and then you'll get something lovely. It's not about automating the whole process, but it's about using it in different bits and pieces that make sense to actually get something really great. It does make it faster, don't get me wrong, but it's not the whole. All right. So we've discussed a lot about how we both use AI. Is there anything that we missed?
Any favorite tools?
What do I use? I use Claude. I know you use Claude as well. So far, I've used most of the other big ones. It's the one that gives me the best output. So I'd say Claude is probably my text generation favorite. We also use the Anthropic models to analyze for fisheries. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, it's worked really well so far. So in that sense, but then I use some of the different Canva features as well. They've had the background remover for a while. That's always been a really, really good one.
It's amazing.
It's really amazing, yeah. So that's a good one. I like their Dream Lab just to ideate, because you can put in a prompt and kind of get something. You can put like a reference image and then just kind of like explore. So I don't use anything that comes out as is, but it's really nice to kind of explore. And so I use those. I use actually Notion AI because I use a lot of my stuff in Notion. So like shitty stuff that I don't want to write, like the meta description for an article, I don't need to like think about it. I could just like, okay, this is the article. It's already there. All I have to do is tell Notion, like, please write the meta description under this many characters. And then it gives it to me and I'm like, looks good. It's like 2 lines. Like, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, oh my God, are my brain cells better off used somewhere else than this?
And it does a really good job of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I use that. What else do I use in terms of Gen AI?
Have you used Jasper?
Oh, yeah. So I was using Jasper before GPT. came out, and like for company stuff. And I would use it mostly to do transcript into article creation. So a lot of it was like, okay, here are like customer interviews. And then I'd be able to make the base of an article with it. Nowadays, instead of Jasper, I use AI Contentify. My friend built the tool, and they're finished anyway. So I use them instead. They still don't have transcript to text, but I've been pestering, so hopefully soon. But that also does a really good job. It takes into account some important things. And I get it to about 80. But again, if you don't know what good is, then you don't know what to keep, what to let go. What else? I guess we use AI when it comes to recording this pod.
Yes.
There's an optimization that comes in, getting rid of, well, actually, I was using Descript already previously to do this kind of AI editing, which is just transcript editing. And you have to have AI behind that. You don't have a choice. Like basically what it does is it takes audio file and then it makes a transcript, and then you can edit the transcript and then it edits the audio. Like that has been game changer, because then you don't have to actually edit the audio. There are still limits. The output is not as perfect as an audio engineer actually editing the audio, but
an average layman audio engineer like we are.
And
fantastic.
also like my brain capacity for editing actual audio, I've had to do it in the past and it's so painful, or even like having a video and having to tell a videographer like, okay, cut here, cut there. Like it used to be so painful. And now it's just so much easier to either do it ourselves or like get the timestamps out properly without having to rewatch the thing over and over.
Yes. Massive time save.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff. You still can't, like, rarely can you get like a really polished, high quality product out of, what you're getting. But I think you can get it really, 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 really far. What else are we using? What else are you using?
Well, I use ChatGPT. It was one of the first one that was like kind of mainstream, and we have a company subscription. So I tend to go to that because it doesn't have any of the limitations that, any of the free models would have. So because it is a paid subscription, then it has like a lot of memory. So it kind of like knows what I worked on before, or I can always go back to like, hey, remember this like thing that we were working on 2 months ago? Can you refer to that? Let's do something similar now. So I think that's really helpful. Something that you mentioned, Claude, I do love that one. I don't have a subscription for that, but sometimes I like to like just cross check. So I use the same prompt in both ChatGPT and Claude. I often love Claude's output more, just because it's interesting how the models just like sound different. They have their own like different tone of voice, and Claude is just a little bit more human, whereas like ChatGPT comes out very like robotic and more like, yes, master, I'm gonna follow your commands. And I love Canva's Magic Lab. It's fantastic, specifically because I think ChatGPT, of course, they have their Dolly feature in there, but it just comes out so cartoonish, and it's very clearly ChatGPT, or OpenAI, sorry. So I do not love that one, but yeah, Canva, I don't know if it's their own proprietary model, as Soph is nodding here. So I love that because it does, I don't know, it has this like ethereal feel. It's very like polished and nice looking. So I like that one.
Actually, one that I didn't mention, but I've been using for a while, Grammarly has had AI for quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I really so I use Grammarly a lot, especially, with my clients and whatnot, because I can have different brand guidelines that I customize. So a lot of those I customize manually, and then I have the brand tones that I have set up, but then combine that with some of the AI. I've been seeing people complain about Grammarly giving bad recommendations and whatnot. I think it's because these people are mostly relying on the full AI features. And I'm like, you still have to know the basis of why you're doing something and build that. And that's your foundation. And actually be able to have, okay, this is actually our knowledge base. This is what we want. This is the voice, tone, style, whatever. And then from that, you can enhance with other things, right? And so with those, like I always have like proper brand voice and tone. I have a proper like actual like style rules that always catches the things that should be caught. But, it is what it is. There's still machines, right? But Grammarly, really, super fan. I've been using it for a really long time. So yeah.
That is a good one because I've seen people online kind of saying like, oh, I like quit Grammarly after I got like ChatGPT. And I'm like, I would not do that because what I often do is I take something from ChatGPT and I put it into Grammarly and I edit the text inside of Grammarly because then I can kind of like shuffle, make it sound less like ChatGPT because it's so evidently the output of a bot. And as you said, you have your brand guidelines. So it actually, dashes or not, or you have like British English instead of US English. So that really helps kind of like bring it to your brand's voice.
And, I've heard of people like, oh, well, why would I use Grammarly if I can just like put the same guidelines into GPT? I'm like, because you can't. Like the Grammarly UI was built so that it makes sense for this use case. GPT was not, right?
And GPT forgets that because I've asked it multiple times to not do this or please do it that way. And then I log into it again. And as I said, I have memory in my subscription and it casually forgets or I don't know.
Because it's not meant for that, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's fine because I have Grammarly. So that's where I use them for separate things. I use ChatGPT for ideation, brainstorming, for developing or pushing an idea further. And then I refine it in Grammarly.
Yeah. I have to say it's quite interesting that people have kind of stopped using calculators to use GPT.
Oh my God.
But I still hear kind of like pushback on using Grammarly instead of GPT. And I'm like, literally, stop using the text generator to correct your grammar. And also, Grammarly is not there to correct your grammar. It's there so that you can have clear communication.
Yes.
Which is very different, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Any other tools that we didn't mention?
Well, sure. It's actually funny because like for a person that uses AI a lot, I don't have that like wide set of tools, at least not that I consciously have. Like there's probably some built into the various like tools that I use, but it's just not very apparent.
Yeah. All right. So what would you do's and don'ts? What are do's and don'ts of AI in marketing?
I think AI is fantastic for brainstorming, for, pushing or developing an idea further, maybe getting like different variations that you wouldn't like come up with. Maybe you're stuck. I think like these, this like blank page, like fear of the blank page, just getting something on that blank page so you don't start from like zero. I think that like is a really great way to kind of like just get started. Like, sometimes I get like output from AI and I'm like, this is terrible. But now I have something to edit and I'm like, I can make this great. And any like repetitive tasks, like if you have, as you said, meta text that you need to like develop, like just like get that out of the way. And simplifying content. I said earlier that I have like these like subject matter expert, like long blog articles of like 10-minute like reading plus like very complex ideas. Like just like simplify it for me. Meeting transcripts, also fantastic. And getting like really actionable to-do lists based on those.
I almost forgot. Such a good point. I actually use, every time I have a meeting, I use Woodpecker like AI meeting notes. Oh my God. Amazing. And I actually, it's again, built for this purpose, right? For basically getting action points, getting conclusions, getting main descriptions or whatnot. I've been using it for customer research interviews. I've been using it for the course that I'm creating so that all of the beta sessions that I've been running this past year, so that I don't have I'm not looking at the transcript. I'm looking at the like nice long summary. It's a summary, yes, but it's just organized. Like Woodpecker, awesome, another Finnish company.
And I think that's what is interesting is that it's still a human, right? It's human generating these ideas. It's your original thoughts and ideas that are just being brought, like AI is helping it like tighten it up, which would normally take you a lot of time, but it's still you. You still need the human.
I should show you like the output. It's just truly fantastic. And you get it within like a few minutes after your meeting. You actually have action points. You have summary. You can actually get, it's really
When I was an intern, that was in my first place. That was my job, and that was I learned a lot, but at the same
so
time,
painful, right?
It is painful. You're just sitting there, you're taking a ton of notes, and then within the next hour, you have to tidy it all up and send it to everybody. And I was obviously as an intern, I was so stressed that I missed something. It was a lot of pressure.
And it's such a crucial job, though. In teams where you only have, strategists, or you only have leadership, you don't have enough juniors that can actually do that, then you end up with nobody doing those. And now we have it, hopefully, now we have these tools. But again, it's oh, do we really need this? I'm yes, you really need meeting notes. This is actually
important. Yes, because I do not remember. I have so many things going on. As you progress through life, you realize that there's only so few things that you can remember, even if it's 15 minutes after the meeting. So what would you then, as a marketer, not use AI for?
I would not use AI on its own. I would, because I also kind of come from a slightly artistic background. I don't want to use AI for my art because it defeats the purpose of actually doing the art. So I would not use it for that.
A whole separate question, is AI art legit?
I think it is legit in terms of art is art. And as long as people are, getting an emotion out of something, then it's fine. But me personally, I do, live theater. I do actual physical old school analog painting.
So old school.
I mean, the whole point of doing these things is that it's not, so digital. Right. So then I wouldn't use necessarily AI for that. And I don't trust LLMs or Gen AI to make analytics generation, because that's not what it's meant for. So I would please caution marketers to stop asking LLMs to analyze your data. That it doesn't work. That's not the point. It's different than saying, can you summarize these things? And then you actually check. But even then, I've tried doing those things. I'm take only this data and please do this. And it still doesn't work, right? I'm here's a list of words. Please make all possible combinations out of these columns. And it's still shit, right? I wouldn't use it for that. But when it comes to summarize this and put it in a table, or, those kinds of things, then yes, go for it. But if if you need to be trusting it and you don't actually fact check, then might as well just do it manually, but always fact check. Otherwise,
regarding data analysis, what is interesting is that whenever I drop in a CSV file with actual data into ChatGPT, it cannot read it. Even though it's analyzing it, doing something with it, thinking, the results are always I just don't understand. Whenever I take a screenshot of the table that I have with data, then it finally gets it. And I mean, I don't know what it is, but if you do want a little bit of help with your data, pointing out some outliers or something, that's the way to do it. Which is just weird.
I've sometimes asked it, can you take the text from this image and just recreate it in plain text? It can do it. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm just seriously, how hard is it? And some models do it better than others, and, etc. But I'd say, what would I not use it for? I would not use it to replace a human. Essentially, it's not meant to replace, it's just meant to accelerate. And if you don't have an actual human in the process at all, then might as well just don't use it, because you're making more issues in the future than is worth.
Yes, all of these people who are an individual entrepreneur and are refusing to hire people, that's where you're going to have, having problems with your marketing and whatever else you're doing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there are some things. Actually, one other that I'm using AI for is to help wireframing for web designs. And that's been really awesome, because I can actually do the wire. I know I've done them manually. I know how to do them, but I can actually do them much quicker now with tools that are basically AI based or whatever.
Yeah, you showed it to me. It's essentially just populating the wireframes, right?
Well, actually, so I use Reloom and I can connect it to Webflow. And what it does is basically I tell it, hey, I want these different sections. I want this many pages. And then it'll make, because they already have a library of elements that you can build with, right? So it's not like it's coming from nothing, but then it'll make a wireframe from it that you can actually interact with. And from that, then you can choose, okay, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, fix the stuff. And then you can actually mock it up with the real elements and export it as an actual design.
Sweet.
Instead of doing it manually, which is freaking amazing. But again, because I've done it manually before, I know how to do it now without it being like, oh, I guess I press a button and I hope for the best. Then you're going to get the same generic thing, right? So yeah, we're coming up with all these other tools that I forgot I was using. There's AI and everything now, but sometimes it's worth it. Not.
That's what it is that any tool essentially that I work with these days has AI to a certain extent. Maybe they had it also before, but now because it's trendy, they're actually advertising it.
Yeah. I'd still be careful with people doing that though.
Yeah. But let's talk about AI flops and AI successes. And I think both Soph, exactly. So both Soph and I, we were trying to be very like fair here. And we were like, okay, when we talk about fails, like you also should talk about successes. And the more we thought about it, at least I came to a conclusion that I can't name a single campaign that was a successful use of AI, because a successful use of AI should not be obvious. It was there somewhere along the lines, helping you with ideation, brainstorming, doing mock-ups, and pushing the idea a little bit further, giving you variations of the same idea. But it's not the highlight of the marketing campaign. It's not that you look at this final output and you're like, this is a fantastic AI generated image, or this AI copy that was written was like just top notch. You can't tell whether, like, that's success to me, is that you can't tell that there was in any way AI involved, and it feels and looks human at the end. That's successful AI to me.
Agreed. I have nothing else to add. We shouldn't know is the whole point.
Yes. Great AI. It's probably out there, but you don't know about it. And that's why it's great.
On the next episode of Like, Is This Legit?
I don't want to see this new tech in something that should feel real and special. Same thing with like Toys R Us. I don't want to see like fake AI children in my advertisement. I want to see real kids playing with the real products that you have.
Bring back the 90s ads of kids playing with toys.
Dear listeners, please note that the views and opinions in this episode, like all episodes of Like, Is This Legit?, do not reflect the official position of the podcast and are the hosts and guests' subjective opinions and quoted allegations. The content from each episode of Like, Is This Legit? Should not be taken for indisputable fact and should be viewed as an educational starting point for listeners. All content shared by our hosts, guests, and sponsors are their own opinions and are not meant to defame or misrepresent any business, group, organization, individual, anyone, or anything. Just don't scam people. Okay? Okay.